So since the election is over, Hillary Clinton's been doing some interviews here and there, usually discussing more the personal side of stuff than the policy side of stuff. Well, she sat down with Vox for an interview, and we have a little clip here that they released. They actually released this before the full interview was released, but this generated quite a bit of noise on the internet for obvious reasons. So let's watch, and then we'll come back and discuss.
If you're running a raucous, pluralistic, diverse democracy where there are literally millions of different voices, you are going to hear from all kinds of voices. I was a senator for 8 years. I bet the vast majority of people who came through the doors of my Senate office to talk to me, to advocate, whatever they were doing, were not political donors, or certainly not political donors to me. They were constituents. They were citizens. They had something to say. And so part of what we've shrunk the political process to such a narrow set of questions. And that's in the interest of both the far right and the far left, both of whom want to blow up the system and undermine it and all the rest of the stuff they talk about. I think we operate better when we're kind of between center right and center left, because that's where, at least up until recently, maybe it's changed now, until recently, that's where most Americans were.
It's incredible. She acts like cameras don't exist and we don't have a record of the things that she says. Do you remember during the primary when she argued tooth and nail and scolded Bernie Sanders for insisting, you're a centrist? That's not me saying it. You've said it. There was an old quote of she's in a room with a bunch of centrists and she goes, some people accuse me of being a centrist. I say guilty. But no, during the primary, all of a sudden, Chameleon Hillary comes out and she's trying to pander to the proper group of people given the context. She's like, no, I'm a progressive.
I was asked, am I a moderate or a progressive? And I said, I'm a progressive who likes to get things done.
I'm a strong progressive. Bernie's like, no, you said you're a centrist. She's like, no, how dare you malign me and besmirch my integrity and my honor. Are you saying I'm a liar? No, I'm a progressive. Well, now the election's over. She's like, cameras? Record of what I've said? Forget that. Now I'm going to say something totally different because I'm Hillary Clinton and I don't think facts matter or my history matters. And now, we operate best when we're between center right and center left. What happened? What happened? You thought that was the biggest offense in the world when Bernie said that exact same thing during the primary, but now the truth comes out because it's after the election. Ugh. Now, furthermore, what's the problem with that line of thinking? Oh, here I am, a centrist. That argument that she made it's an argument that stupid people think is smart. That's what that argument is. Every time I hear that, I'm reminded of sitting at the dinner table for a family gathering, and the person who reads nothing about politics, doesn't know anything about the policy, isn't up to date with news and information, chimes in when there's some sort of political discussion going on and says something like, I feel we operate best when we're in between the right and the left. Why can't we all just be centrist? Because it's such a lazy point. And it assumes that, if you just split the difference, everything is great. But hold on, what if the spectrum in the U.S., or the Overton window, is way off to the far right? Well, if you split the difference between right wing and super far right wing, then the middle between those 2 points is far right wing. And that's what we have in the United States of America. We have one party, which is the Democratic Party, which is a center-right party, which, passes legislation all the time, pushes legislation all the time that's great for big pharma, that's great for health insurance companies, that's great for Wall Street and other multinational corporate donors and wealthy donors. Now, every now and then, the Democrats throw you a bone on social issues. Wow, you don't totally hate gays and black people. Oh my, so impressive you are. That's the Democratic Party. And then the Republican Party sells out even more to corporations And then they're also totally backwards on all the social issues. And, you know, they're, as Bill Maher said years ago from a New Rule segment, they're flat earthers and Civil War reenactors. And, you know, people who don't believe in science. So you have one party that's right-wing and the other party that's far, far right-wing. And then you split the difference and there's Hillary Clinton in the far right-wing. Acting like, what? No, I'm just a reasonable centrist. That's all I am. Well, think about her record. If she thinks she's a reasonable centrist, then apparently reasonable centrism means passing the Patriot Act, which gets rid of your constitutional rights. No more protection from unreasonable search and seizure. No more due process. You can hold people extrajudicially. That's Hillary Clinton centrism. Getting rid of your constitutional rights. Hillary centrism is outsourcing your job. Her centrism is deregulation for Wall Street. It's the Iraq War. It's military intervention in Libya. It's pushing military intervention in Syria. So her idea of centrism is a hawkish foreign policy and policies that help Wall Street here at home on the domestic front and the economic front. So that's why this is fucking insufferable. Because she lied and was like, oh, no, I'm totally progressive. Now it's over. Yeah, I'm a centrist. And also because that argument presupposes that, you know, the right and the left somehow have equally half valid points and you split the difference between them. But no, the Republican Party, the politicians in Washington are fucking crazy. So if you say I want to meet them halfway, that means you are half crazy. So that's not something to fucking be proud of and act like you're some sort of intellectual. Aren't I so smart? I said, let's go to the middle. What could possibly be wrong with that? Goldman Sachs, do you have more money for me? Wonderful. She's not going away, and somehow she's getting worse, man. Somehow she's getting worse. That sort of milquetoast, pro-establishment, pro-corporate nonsense is nothing but apologetics for bad policy. Because you want to know... You want to know who's really an international centrist? Me. I'm not a centrist in the U.S. sense because our spectrum is way off to the right, so centrism is just far right in the U.S. But when you look at all the industrialized nations, I'm a centrist. Because I'm right smack dab in the middle of popular opinion. And I want things like universal health care, you know, single payer. I want free college. I want a living wage. I want to end the wars. You know, these are things that the overwhelming majority of people believe in. These are things that when it comes to the domestic front, these are things that other industrial nations already have. They already have these things. So when I come along and say, hey, I agree with them, if I talk to people in those countries, they wouldn't say I'm some sort of far left crazy person. No, they'd be like, oh, you're really reasonable and centrist. That's what you are. So I'm the real centrist, internationally speaking. It just so happens that in the U.S., with our spectrum in Washington, to be specific, I come across as the most far left person on the planet because the spectrum in Washington is super far right, which is why Bernie Sanders looks like he's some sort of radical when he's saying the most banal, uncontroversial, duh shit on the planet. And also, final point to make here is the spectrum in Washington is the issue here. Because when you look at the American people, they actually agree with the other modern industrial nations. So the problem is she's a creature of Washington. And if you're a creature of Washington and you talk about being some sort of reasonable centrist, you're actually just a douche.